So you said, hey, you want to hear about grit? Let me tell you about grit.
Yeah, I did. Dealing with grief is never easy. It can come tragically in an instant.
You know, this was not just my wife, this was my best friend, you know, my confidant.
Josh Coleman had his whole life turned upside down.
My sounding board, my everything, you know.
How far are you willing to go to process that grief?
10 days after my birthday, she was involved in a car crash.
For Josh, it's hundreds and hundreds of miles to keep going.
Finished the Tahoe 200. It was my first 200, and everybody's like, man, you just kind of jumped in.
And to keep the memory of his sweet Erin in every footstep.
The trade-off is the pain of what I've had to go through.
Listen in as we discuss finding resolve through tragedy and running through grief on Mean Grit.
All right, well, welcome to the Mean Grit podcast. I have Josh Coleman. Hey, man, it is so cool to just meet random people. So Josh and I don't know each other at all.
Nope.
We met at an event yesterday and chatted, and I said, well, actually, you said, hey, you want to hear about grit? Let me tell you about grit.
Yeah, I did.
And which I love.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we'll dive into it, but just give us a brief introduction of who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Josh Coleman, and I'm an ultra runner. I've been running for the last 2 years. I didn't grow up being a runner. You know, I ran like the mile when I was in 6th grade, and I was kind of good at it. And then when I got to junior high, I became like a very mid-pack type runner. Everybody ended up being faster and stronger than me. And then, you know, honestly, I did sports and played like softball and tennis and basketball and, you know, things like that, but really didn't get into running until like, you know, a little bit in my 30s, ran my first 2 marathons, but didn't really take it serious until I got into my 40s. And
where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Kansas City.
Okay. Plains, I mean, very different from these mountains.
Yeah, very different. So, and then we were in our mid 30s, and my wife and I at the time just decided to pick up and move to New York.
Okay.
I had a couple cousins that lived there, and one cousin's like, if you can move here, you can make it, you know? So
New York City?
New York City, yeah.
Nice.
We lived right in Manhattan, and we moved there in 2013, and just like out of the blue, and just like our families are like, what are you doing? And we're just at a point in our life where we were up for a new adventure, and, you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's a little bit of that, you know, you only live once. So, you know, you got to kind of get out there and take chances. And so that's what we did. We moved to New York, and I think that's honestly where I kind of picked up my passion for running. You know, I had kind of a mental grind of working in an agency life, and it was like nonstop hours, and it was like anything to just get my mentals in the right place was to go out and run. And I found a really cool run group there called Harlem Run Group, and they were awesome, and they inspired me, and that's kind of where everything kind of took off in the running world for me.
Man, I love New York. So I spent 14 years in Hong Kong, and so it's like the New York of Asia, but just the hustle and bustle. And
it's just a different vibe, and I think people don't understand until you live there, like, oh, I can never live there. Well, it's like, you're right, you shouldn't probably live there. It's not for everyone, but New York just has this special energy, and I'm sure Hong Kong is somewhat similar, and there's just a vibe there, and it is the grind and the grit that's there, and it's grimy, and the subways are nasty at times, and there's just all kinds of nefarious things going on.
Sure.
You just kind of learn to deal with it, and we loved it. You know, my wife was a huge Broadway fan, and so that's one of the reasons why we moved there, and we could just be there firsthand seeing, you know, shows, and I was just up for the adventure, and you know, just being a part of that city and be able to go run through the streets of New York was just everything that I can imagine. So
that's so cool. And then we're going to jump forward and then backwards, but you just finished Tahoe 200.
I did. I finished the Tahoe 200. It was my first 200, and everybody's like, man, you just kind of jumped in. I was like, I guess I kind of did. I just ran my first ultra like 2 years ago, and that was a 50K, barely a 50K. I think it was right at 30 miles, and it was how that kind of all came about is last April, I was coming out here. I was going to decided to run my first 100 last year. I was doing the Bighorn.
Okay.
And it was in June. And so I was already planning on coming out from Florida. I was living in Florida at the time because we'd moved there, and we could talk about that.
Yeah.
But I was on my way out to Arizona because I was going to do the Eldon Crest 38. And lo and behold, Candice Burt announced, because I met her previously, I did the Bigfoot 40 the year before. And when I came out west, and she was attempting to do the FKT on the Arizona Trail, and I was like, "Hey, do you need pacers?" And she's like, "Yes, I could definitely use pacers." And I was like, "Perfect." So it was like a win-win. So I came out in April to Arizona, and I ended up pacing her like 3 different nights, and we had a couple of like really crazy nights. So I came out to do the Eldon Crest 38, which ended up being part of the Cocodono 250 series. It's like their smaller, tiny race, the 38 miler.
Yeah.
So I ran that to prepare. But the disappointing part of it is they ended up taking out the Eldon Crest because the horned owl, the Mexican horned owl, moves its nest every year. So they can only allow the 250s to go through there. So I didn't get the climb that I wanted, but it was still a fun, fast race, and it was still a race. And so, so while I was talking with her, it's like, yeah, I got these 200s, and we have this Triple Crown, and if you sign up, you can. So I blame her for that. And
that's so funny. Everybody needs that friend who's like, why don't you just do this?
Yeah, just do the 200s are the new 100, and so. So even though in her race she says if you get lost or die, it's her own damn fault. But I do say because of the 200 for doing it, it's her fault. But yeah, so you have to sign up in the previous May to do all 3 for the next year. So I signed up last May, not even running my first 100 yet.
Wow.
And so I was like, I'm just diving in. So it's like, yeah, I guess I'll find out if I like them or not, or I can always defer. But so that led up, did the 100, ended up doing Leadville last year, but had to DNF that race because I fell, landed on my hip, and I ended up having to pull at Winfield, which was the turnaround. So I always say the silver lining was I got to see the whole course. I just didn't go back to see, but I was trying to grit it out. I will say I crashed at mile 13 and still got to like mile 50. So,
nice.
But it was like I was going to get cut off anyway. So I was like, I'm just going to recluse myself here, and got out. And so, and then I capped off the year, did the Chicago Marathon, because that would always been on my bucket list to do, coming from the road marathon side, and ended up PRing in that race. So I ran a 3:03.
Oh, and, congratulations.
Grinded that one out. And so, so that led into this year, and then getting prepared for the 200. So, doing the Tahoe 200, the Triple Crown, the Bigfoot 200, which will be in August, and then cap it off in October doing the Moab 240. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, just diving in, man.
Well, hey, let me know if you need pacers for the 240.
You say it on camera, so I'm going to hold you to it. I'll need it. It's holding. So James is going to pace me for the Moab 240. I could definitely use some pacers because that is the longest of the 200. So
what a beautiful course too.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I hear. I've only been in Moab once, but the little that I was there, it's just absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to run that one as well.
It's so inspiring, but this inspiration kind of comes from a difficult place. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately 3 years ago, in the midst of when we lived in New York, during COVID, we decided, my wife and I at the time decided to move to Florida, and it was a great move. It was like May of 21. And in September of 21, we decided to just go ahead and buy a house there. We're just like, we're both working remote. Our companies are good with it. And so we bought a house, didn't end up moving into it until January when it got finished. And then everything was good. She was getting involved in community theater. I was running some local races in Florida. This is in the Fort Myers area, the Gulf Coast side of Florida. And then unfortunately, about 10 days after my birthday, she was involved in a car crash, which ended up, she ended up having some bleeding in the brainstem, and so we ended up having to pull her off the breathing tube. So she survived the crash, but ultimately the damage was already done during the crash. And so Yeah, it was the most. June 11th was the day of the crash, and it was the day that my world ultimately turned upside down. This was not just my wife; this was my best friend. My confidant, my sounding board, my everything. And everything just flipped upside down, and so. She passed on June 16th, and within a week after, my mom's like, you need to keep running.
Yeah.
And so I took that advice, and I just kept running every day, and that's what ultimately helped me get through those. It's just that sharp pain. Those first weeks and months are just sharp. I mean, it's just an ultimate gut punch every day, and it's like every day you wake up and you're reminded of this tragedy, and only thing I could do was to run every day.
Yeah.
And then I started hitting the trails, because the wilderness is just a good place to really escape. And you're not escaping the grief, but it's just a place where you can go and just ultimately just lay it all out there. I mean, I cried. I screamed. I mean, everything I could do to just get through the grief.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you experience that's so tough, and I have no comprehension of what that feels like, but I do, for those who watched, I've struggled with anxiety and depression, and that's what the trails have kind of done for me, and it's this interesting balance, and you've talked about it, is you're not running away from the problems, but maybe like sorting through it, and it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm with you, James. I mean, I struggle with a lot of mental health, especially, and even as an extrovert, I get anxiety getting around a lot of people, and then I drink coffee, and it's probably not helping. And then I start getting amped up, and I start talking to, after living in New York, and I'm sure living in Hong Kong, you start, it's like keeping up with the pace. You talk 100 miles an hour, but you're exactly right. It is sorting through the pain, and grief is, it's different for everyone, and there's really no manual. I mean, obviously there's guides, there's books, there's things like that, but it's different for everyone, and
it's very personal.
Yeah, and it's something that like I'll never move on from or get over, because those are always the cliche things, and that's part of what I'm writing about in my book. Is what you do is you learn to move forward with it. You learn to carry that grief not as a burden, but as a guide, and then because it has changed me, it's made me a different person. It's taken me in this whole different path that 3 years ago, today, like I wouldn't be here. I don't know that I would be a part of the ultra running community, not because of her, but just because our lives were so much together. So I would be doing just probably more local things, and she'd be more involved in the local community. But for me, it's just going out and truly exploring and kind of figuring this thing out, and meeting other people along the way. And that's just how I've dealt with the grief. I ultimately rented out our house, and now I'm living in a camper van part of the year. Just to because all I want to do is explore. I want to see what's out there. I want to kind of see what's next for me.
It's always interesting. People, sometimes they're like, oh wow, that is the life that I want, and they're like, but they don't recognize the trade-off. Like you've had a major trade-off.
And that's exactly what it is, and it's funny you say that, because I've had a lot. Oh man, it sounds like the great life, and there are aspects of it is great. And I can wake up next to a lake or a trailhead or something like that. But the trade-off is the pain of what I've had to go through. And I was like, I ultimately would take my life back with her in a heartbeat, obviously. But that's not the reality, and the reality is that she's no longer here physically, but I know she's like with me. I can hear her, and especially like when I go on these long runs, like I can just hear, like, because she would get so amped up when she'd see me coming through like an aid station, or be at one of my races at one of the cross points or something like that. And
I'm sure she's so proud. Like, just
she would be. I know she would be, and because we were our biggest fans, because she was like the community theater, actress, singer, and I'm like the runner, athletic guy, and so that's what made our relationship work ultimately.
And what was her name?
Erin.
Erin.
Yeah. She was a beautiful, beautiful soul, and gone way too soon at 40. But I just look at it as like, I think she served her purpose in life, and it is a weird thing to think about and say, but for whatever reason, she's not supposed to be here anymore, and her destiny, and she did so much in my life. It made me a better person. She continues to make me a better person, even though she's not here, because there's always those reminders.
Yeah.
And I know her family and her mom and brother would say the same thing about their lives.
So you're writing a book.
Yes.
Tell me the title of the book.
Yeah, so the title's called Moving Forward, Running with Grief. And ultimately, it is about this journey of grief and how running and ultimately ultra running has helped me get through and, move forward through this grieving process.
Well, that's awesome. So here again on camera, when the book's done, we're going to have you back.
I would love it.
We'll promote the book.
Yeah.
It'll be more than just my mom and her friends watching by that time. So.
Absolutely. No, we'll get it promoted out there. I appreciate that, James.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one question I love to ask all of my guests is, what is your definition of grit?
Yeah, I mean, I think my definition of grit is getting up every day and facing the challenges of the day, because life is not easy.
Yeah.
Life is a grind, and it takes grit to get through every day. And there's days that I can think about when I would be laying in bed and I didn't want to get up, but I knew I had to get up and get through it. And I think life is gritty. It's hard.
Yeah,
and I think for me, it's just, you have to get a little dirty sometimes, and you have to get after it, and that's what I love. And I love mean grit, because it's like, man, when you're on a trail or just life in general, you got to be a little gritty.
Yep.
You got to get after it. And because life isn't easy. And if anybody says it is, I don't know what life they're living.
Yeah.
And I think it makes life more meaningful too, because you look back on those days when they are hard, and you think about where you come from. And you think, man, it did take a lot of grit to get through that period of life.
And you're still grit?
Still grinding.
That's awesome. Well, Josh, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time and also being willing to open up on difficult topics. But like and subscribe, watch the channel, and stay tuned. This could be some more to come from Josh Coleman and the Mean Grit podcast. Maybe a Moab reunion.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
cool.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you,
Hey,
James.
thanks.
Appreciate